So in this first video, we leave London just before Tier 4 comes in due to a new strain of coronavirus being found. Drive past lots of already backed up lorry drivers, and we get the last legitimate train out of the UK, the Eurotunnel, into France. We drive across France with a beautiful sunset, some amazing views. We have an amazing dinner in our rooms because that's the only option in a France that has a curfew. And we stay in a beautiful chateau, which we had planned to do because we thought the curfew meant you couldn't drive through France. But you can drive through France at night with a waiver. But let's get back to the beginning. So here I am trying to finish the install of the 4K next base dashcam tranquilly into the Defender, which is a video I should get out soon, before driving down to Spain through France after having got a PCR test and that all being negative, to go and see extended family when, apart from the rain, we have an announcement that London is about to enter Tier 4. So there was only really one thing to do, and that was to wait until the traffic of the mad panic buying died down and aim to get out of the UK before midnight. And then the idea was either to stay in France until the curfew ended and get to the hotel which had already been planned, to get us sort of halfway in time to avoid curfew. Fortunately, when grabbing a coffee with someone in the Eurostar, having just made it through customs before midnight, they said that you can use the exemption form for long-distance travel and drive through France, which is what we did. But obviously we didn't know whether to carry on through or to stop or to arrive early at the destination. There's a lot going on at the moment. But we ultimately decided to stick to the plan, arrive a bit early, have a good bit of rest before the next day. So this is the journey, and I hope you like it. So as we've just left the new American embassy behind us on our right and approaching Vauxhall roundabout, you can just see a glimpse of the MI6 building on the left. And I'm going to then fast forward past the Oval Cricket Ground, Shooters Hill, and down into the lorry drivers that were already backed up, and crossing the ferry, and then trying to do my usual routine, which I will show you in other videos, of driving as far as I can into the night and then having 20-minute sleep stops like people do when they're trying to do endurance events, which kind of doesn't work out when you have children in the car, as you will see, but instead driving them until they are exhausted and asleep, and then we see a beautiful sunup as I get some sleep whilst they are asleep. So even at 11 something on the evening of the 19th of December, there were already a lot of lorry drivers backed up, and it was quite difficult driving past them and not feel something for many of these people who knows how long they'd been there and how many of them had to spend Christmas there. We got the last priority ticket. I always buy my tickets just before going because I like to know exactly when we're going and plan things around, well, events like this, but also how you feel, weather, events, and as it happened, as this was announced, if we'd have left earlier, we would have been stuck in traffic in London as everybody panic bought. And if we had left in the early hours of the morning, which was one of the other options, then, although it doesn't seem to matter to a lot of people, it would have been past midnight and we shouldn't really have been doing it. So I felt better getting out of England before midnight, which we did, or passport control. And so, yeah, let's get on with it.
Thank you. Bye.
So, having left French and British customs before midnight, it was now a question of, do we wait and get an early train across to France, or do we get the first one and then wait in France? Can't imagine the questions before speaking to a guy in the cafe who said, no, you can just motor through. Because obviously it's difficult trying to plan these things, and I did not want to have to sleep in Calais, for example. We arrived to an absolutely empty cafe where there was nothing, not even milk in the coffee machine, there were no sandwiches, there was nothing. So it was time to get on and get into France, really. That's the only decent thing to do.
First call in 16 minutos.
Okay. Wow, look at the queue.
So I'm still editing, but at some point we'll put up how I went down to Bordeaux first and then down to Spain over the summer with the restrictions that we had. But I can say one thing, it's a lot easier to be with your mask in the train during the winter than it is in the summer. It's not just a difference, it's all of the difference. So then, armed with a digital exemption form for long distance travel, we plugged on into the night, at first with lots of other cars that had got off of the ferry or the Eurotunnel, and then basically it all petered out and there was nobody. Cruised at first at about 110 because we weren't in a hurry anymore. And decided to, at some point, to have some sleep, because normally what I'd do if I did this is, have some good sleep during the day, and then I do drive all night, and then have, small 20-minute stops from about 7 in the morning or something, by which time I've usually reached deep into, at least kind of the, deep into southern France. But yeah, that was slightly different this time. So at first it said we would arrive at our destination at about 7 in the morning, but there was no way I was going to go on until 7 in the morning. So at about 5:30 in the morning, I thought I would stop at a decent service station I know, and I would have a small siesta and then wake up in time for when they opened at 6 and served as breakfast. But little did I know, the little ones in the car had other ideas. So after feeding them at 6 and hoping that would work, and realising that it didn't, I then backed up, filled up with fuel, and we went on to the next stop. Filling up with fuel in any time in France is all contact-free. There's a little cash machine, or there's usually a payment method within each pump. In this case, it was just these pumps on the left, and you pre-authorize the payment on your card, you fill up, you go. It's all pretty COVID-friendly, without any intention of it being COVID-friendly. So here we are, reversing out of the next fidgety, wiggly, aborted sleep attempt. This one is not that much later after that one. I say that because the next stop where we do actually get to sleep is about 7:30, 7:20, something like that. But yeah, it's I mean, I don't fall asleep at the wheel anyway, but by now I was pretty tired, and hoping they'd fall asleep, which they did in this next run as the sun was coming up. It also got pretty cold pretty quickly, despite it being nice and warm. With the Defender, despite what people say, especially when you're on a motorway with a Defender, the blower does blow nice hot air, and people were complaining in the car that it was too hot. But it doesn't matter if you stop at, close to freezing for any period of time, the car will cool down very quickly and not be very nice to sleep in.
Hacia la izquierda.
Sigue saliendo calentito.
So eventually we arrived 3 or 4 hours later than was originally seen on Waze, which was a good few hours earlier than the latest we would have been there. But at the end of the day, it was the same day, a few hours earlier. It meant we could get some rest. But I had rung ahead before to check that we could get food, and they did say that we'd have dinner, but obviously I hadn't planned to arrive at 11 and had not asked if we could have lunch, and neglected to find out the fact that everything's closed restaurant-wise in France at the moment, lunch-wise. So the only lunch we could get is to get back on the motorway to a service station, which is no bad thing in France because a lot of service stations have a pole which has some pretty great sandwiches and stuff, and we knew we were going to have a good meal. So yeah, get some food inside and get some rest. The other option would have been to get to a supermarket, which is obviously a lot cheaper, but it kind of defeats the object of spending the entire lockdown getting as much food as you can get in and going by car to avoid airports if you then get into a crowded supermarket, which is additionally more crowded because there's nowhere else to get food in France at the time. That was my argument anyway, and also I was very tired, and I really like Paul's ham, cheese, baguette. So the arrangement for food was quite interesting in that you had to ring at 6 o'clock with your order and eat it between, I think, 7 and 9. But safe to say, when in France, you eat well, and it's one of the few benefits of hauling your way in a Defender across a continent. Okay, so it's a bit harsh, that light, isn't it? So you can't see the beautiful surroundings we're in the Defender right now because it's pitch black, but just had a fantastic meal and reading that the UK, basically they're closing the Eurotunnel for new passengers coming in about now when I'm recording this, which is about 9:30 UK time. Here in France, so I made a decision to leave before the lockdown, the midnight lockdown rules came in, which meant sort of driving into the night and into France. But as always, France is so you can actually travel through France outside of the curfew if you're doing long distance driving, which we're doing, and so you fill in the forms, etc., and you can do that. And then I suppose the only other thing is obviously, when we arrived here to the hotel, then they couldn't serve us lunch, so we had to drive to a service station to get to a pole, which I happen to know from driving backwards and forwards. In the other video, you'll see going to Arcachon and back once, and then Spain and back another time this summer, which the video should be coming out soon. But yeah, I'm quite happy that we did this. I've seen some terrible pictures of people crowding on the platforms in St. Pancras, which is a very silly thing to do. I'm pretty happy with how the Eurotunnel do things. It's very contact free. And so we did arrive, and there were there was 2 or 3 kilometres of probably even more of trucks, and then if you hadn't paid for the premium, there was quite a long queue as well. But yeah, in the premium Flexiplus or whatever, it allows you to board whenever you want to. Also, we were served food in the hotel room. Sadly, one of the greatest things of France is enjoying the hospitality, like we did in the summer outside, but that was summer. I I can tell you, sleeping small siestas with kids in the car, not the same thing. No. I mean, you basically have to drive until they're exhausted and out for the count, and then possibly even leave the engine running. And they're pretty old kids. But anyway, the reason I did this is that I see it safe the way we've done it. I didn't want to leave after the lockdown was in place, no matter whether I don't think the British police will stop or would have stopped me getting a ferry today. As you can see, they've just closed the Eurotunnel now and people are still leaving, and the Eurotunnel is in a tier 4 place. But I, wanted to do this in a way that I don't see that I'm sort of playing with the rules, because there are too many people doing that. And it's kind of where we are at the moment. But at the end of the day, young children need to be in a way that is responsible and possible to see their family. And I think, for mentally, as adults, need to see each other in a safer possible way. I did get a haircut on Friday morning with somebody who told me that a pub owner says that everybody's sort of COVID whatever goes out of the window when they've had a few drinks, and I just don't get that. I mean, I've met up with my parents and done it in a way that you're sort of distanced and sensible. And believe you me, we have a few gin and tonics. So be responsible and just get a defender. It's the best thing.